Vulnerability is the birthplace of transformation. It is the quiet, unseen force behind every courageous act, every moment of deep connection, and every lasting change. While many of us are taught to see vulnerability as weakness, something to avoid or cover up, it is in truth the most accurate measure of courage we have. It is the risk of being truly seen, of standing in our truth without armor, of showing up without knowing the outcome. Transformation cannot happen without this kind of openness. We cannot become something new while clinging to the safety of the old. Think about the moments in life that truly changed you. Not the ones that looked polished on the outside, but the ones that cracked you open. The conversation where you told someone how you really felt, even when your voice shook. The decision to start over, to say goodbye, or to take a leap. The first time you told the truth after years of silence. These moments demand vulnerability. They require you to step into the unknown with your heart exposed, and that is exactly what makes them transformative. The reason vulnerability is so powerful is that it strips away pretense. It gets us out of our heads and into our hearts. When you're vulnerable, you're not managing your image. You're simply being. And it is in that being, that raw presence, where connection lives. Real connection. Not the curated kind we chase on social media, but the kind that makes you feel less alone in the world. Vulnerability allows two people to meet in a place of truth, where ego has been set aside and humanity stands bare. But make no mistake, vulnerability is not comfortable. It is terrifying. It involves letting go of control and embracing uncertainty. It means opening yourself to the possibility of rejection, of failure, of loss. And yet, paradoxically, it's also the doorway to everything we long for: love, belonging, creativity, purpose. We cannot selectively numb emotion. If we try to shut down fear and shame, we also shut out joy and wonder. To feel deeply is to live fully, and vulnerability is the key to that depth. Transformation begins the moment we say yes to discomfort. Whether it's admitting that we're struggling, asking for help, expressing a boundary, or simply telling someone, "I love you" first, each vulnerable act rewires something inside us. It rewrites the story we've been telling ourselves that we have to be perfect, invulnerable, in control. It says instead, "I am enough as I am. I am worthy of being seen. I don't have to have it all together to be loved." One of the most insidious myths we carry is that we need to be ready before we take action. But vulnerability reminds us that readiness is a lie. No one ever feels completely ready to be honest, to forgive, to show their soul. You go first. You go scared. You go messy. That's the price of transformation, and also its gift. Because on the other side of vulnerability is not just change, but growth that is earned, grounded, and real. Vulnerability also invites others to be brave. It's contagious in the best way. When someone sees you open up, they are more likely to soften too. They begin to trust that they can be human around you. That's how families heal. That's how teams become stronger. That's how relationships move from surface to depth. It only takes one person to choose truth over comfort to set something powerful in motion. At the heart of every transformation story is a moment when someone said, "I don't know how this will end, but I'm going to show up anyway." That is vulnerability. And it is not just a soft, emotional idea. It is a revolutionary act. In a world that encourages perfection, performing and proving, choosing to be vulnerable is choosing to be free. So yes, vulnerability will cost you something. It will ask you to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to become who you really are. But in return, it gives you a life that is more honest, more connected, and more alive. And that, more than anything, is what transformation is all about. Moments matter more than milestones. It's easy to get caught up in the big events, graduations, weddings, promotions, anniversaries, as if they are the main chapters of our lives. They're the ones we mark on calendars, photograph with care, and write social media posts about. But the truth is, it's not the milestones that shape us most deeply. It's the small, often unremarkable moments in between. the ones that don't make the highlight reel, the quiet conversations, the sideways glances, the first time someone really listens, or the last time someone says your name with warmth. These are the moments that define us, not by their grandeur, but by their intimacy and impact. We've been conditioned to chase milestones, to believe that meaning and value come from achievement, that if we just reach the next goal, we'll finally feel enough. But more often than not, we get there and realize we missed something along the way. The milestone was over in a flash, and the moment we thought would complete us just left us wanting more. That's because meaning doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from how we feel, who we're with, and what we notice in the moment. The moments that change everything rarely announce themselves. They slip in quietly and leave an imprint that lasts. Like the time a friend looked at you and said, "I'm proud of you," and you didn't even know you needed to hear it until you did. Or the time someone forgave you, not with words, but with the way they hugged you like nothing had changed. Or the time you laughed so hard with someone that your walls came down without you even realizing it. These aren't milestones. They don't go in the scrapbook, but they stay with you in a way that a formal celebration never could. There's a kind of sacredness to everyday moments when we're fully present for them. But presence is hard in a culture that worships productivity and progress. We're taught to look forward, to plan, to hustle. We're told that slowing down is lazy and that ordinary is not enough. But life isn't lived in the planning. It's lived in the pauses, the breath between the words, the things that happen when no one's watching. That's where the real stuff happens, the raw, the tender, the true. Think about the people you've loved most deeply. It's not just their accomplishments or milestones you remember, it's their laugh, the way they made your coffee just the way you like it, the silly inside jokes, the look in their eyes when you were hurting. That's what you carry. That's what lingers. It's the moment they sat with you in silence when there was nothing to say and it was somehow everything you needed. We often underestimate the power we have to create these moments. We think transformation requires grand gestures, but more often it's found in the choice to be fully present for someone, to listen without fixing, to reach out when it feels awkward, to offer a kind word even when you're tired. Those are the moments that build trust, that build love, that build a life worth remembering, not because they're big, but because they're real. When we look back, we might remember the milestones, but what we truly feel, what brings tears, what makes us smile years later, are the moments we didn't know were changing us at the time. The glance across a room that made your heart race, the spontaneous road trip, the way someone held your hand when you were scared, the conversation that helped you feel seen for the first time. These are the building blocks of a meaningful life. Not the promotions or the awards or the perfectly planned days, but the ones where something honest slipped through the cracks. You don't have to wait for special occasions to feel alive. The invitation is right here in this moment. To look someone in the eyes, to say what you mean, to notice the beauty in something ordinary, to laugh deeply, to cry openly, to let a moment matter even if no one else sees it, especially then. Life is not a series of neatly framed milestones. It's a mosaic of moments, some messy, some fleeting, some so quiet they're almost missed. But together, they tell a story far richer than any timeline ever could. And if we're paying attention, we'll realize we don't have to wait for something big to happen to feel the fullness of being alive. It's already happening. Right here, right now, in this moment. Love is not safe, but it is sacred. It's one of the greatest paradoxes of being human. We long for love, we're wired for it, but the very act of loving requires us to walk into uncertainty with our hearts exposed. Love asks us to risk, to trust, to let go of control. It invites us into closeness with no guarantee that we'll be met, held, or protected the way we hope. And yet we go again and again because somewhere deep inside we know that while love can break us, it can also save us. There's a part of us that wants to believe love can be safe, that if we choose wisely, say the right things, set the right boundaries, or hold ourselves back just enough, we can avoid the pain. But love doesn't work like that. It never has. Real love is not performance, it's not perfection, it's presence. And presence is vulnerable. It means letting people see you, not just the curated version, but the unfiltered one. The one who is sometimes too much, sometimes not enough. The one who gets scared, messy, jealous, quiet, needy, hopeful. And when someone sees that version of you and stays, not to fix or judge, but just to be with you, that's sacred. The sacredness of love isn't in its predictability or its promise to never hurt. It's in its ability to connect souls in a way nothing else can. To say, I see you, I choose you, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. Sacred love is not about avoiding struggle. It's about growing through it together. It's about choosing each other again and again, even when it's uncomfortable, even when the shine has faded and the truth of who we are is fully visible. But love will never be without risk. There's always the chance it won't be reciprocated, that someone might walk away, that you'll care more than they do, that your heart will break. And yet, despite knowing all that, we open ourselves up. Why? Because love has the power to transform not just relationships, but us. Love reveals where we are hiding, where we are still afraid. It invites us to grow, to soften, to show up more fully. It calls out the best in us, even as it exposes our most tender places. We sometimes treat love like a transaction, something we give only if we're sure it will be returned. But sacred love isn't conditional. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't hinge on outcomes. It's a posture of the heart, a willingness to be there, to care, even when the future is uncertain. That doesn't mean we accept anything or abandon boundaries. It means we lead with grace. We stay rooted in compassion, even when we're hurt. We speak our truth with love, even when it shakes. And sometimes love ends. Sometimes the most sacred thing we can do is let someone go. That doesn't make the love less real. In fact, the willingness to release someone with kindness to honor what was, even in the face of heartbreak, might be one of the most sacred acts of all, because it means we loved with open hands, not clenched fists. It means we trusted enough to give, not to possess. We must also remember that love isn't just romantic. The sacredness of love lives in friendships, in family, in the bonds we build with people who truly see us. It's in the laughter that cracks us open and the silence that holds us when words fail. It's in the moments we show up without being asked, the ways we say, you matter, without needing to speak. Love exists wherever there is connection, care, and courage. So no, love isn't safe. It never will be. It will stretch you, it will challenge you, it will break you open in places you didn't know were still closed. But that's exactly why it's sacred, because in a world that teaches us to protect, to prove, to perfect, love invites us to simply be, to be soft, to be real, to be human. And maybe that's the point, not to be safe, but to be alive. Not to avoid pain, but to walk through it with someone beside us. Not to control love, but to let it shape us into people who love more deeply, more honestly, more bravely. In the end, love doesn't promise security, it promises growth. And in that growth, we find the sacred. Shame and joy often hold hands. It's not something we're usually taught, but once we see it, we can't unsee it. The most joyful moments of our lives are often accompanied by a subtle, sometimes overwhelming sense of vulnerability. It's the feeling that something could go wrong at any moment, that we might lose what we've just found, that we don't quite deserve the happiness we're experiencing. Joy, in its purest form, is deeply vulnerable. And where there is vulnerability, shame often lurks nearby. Shame tells us we are not enough, not good enough, not worthy enough, not lovable enough. It is the voice in our head that whispers, who do you think you are to feel this happy, this loved, this seen? And so even in our most precious moments, when we fall in love, when we achieve something meaningful, when we are fully present with people who matter, we often brace ourselves for the fall. We dampen our joy to protect ourselves from the sting of possible disappointment. But joy is not meant to be managed. It's not something we're supposed to ration or earn. It's meant to be felt fully, freely. Yet most of us have been taught that if we let joy in completely, we're inviting heartbreak. That if we celebrate too loudly, fate will hear us and come to take it all away. This fear is shame, cleverly disguised as caution. It convinces us that vulnerability is dangerous when in fact it is the doorway to everything that makes life meaningful. It's no accident that the moments when we feel most alive are also the moments when we feel most exposed. Holding your newborn child for the first time, standing in front of a crowd to share something personal, saying, "I love you," before you know if it will be returned. These are moments soaked in joy and equally steeped in fear, because to love something deeply is to risk losing it. To succeed is to risk falling. To be seen is to risk judgment. And shame is always quick to rush in, trying to protect us by convincing us to hold back. But when we numb the fear of shame, we also numb the possibility of joy. We can't selectively mute emotions. If we shut ourselves off from discomfort, we also shut ourselves off from delight. That's why so many of us live in a kind of emotional gray zone. Not miserable, but never fully joyful either. It feels safer. But it's not living, it's existing. And it's a high price to pay for the illusion of control. Joy and shame are not enemies, they coexist because joy makes us aware of what truly matters. It brings our deepest values to the surface. That awareness opens our hearts, and an open heart is sensitive. It feels everything. So when joy rises up, shame might trail behind, not because we're doing life wrong, but because we're doing it right. We're leaning into what's real. The key is to recognize shame for what it is, a protective mechanism, not the truth. It shows up to try to keep us small, to stop us from being too visible, too happy, too daring. But when we name it, when we say, this is shame, we take away its power. We create space for compassion, both for ourselves and for others. We remind ourselves that it's okay to feel exposed, it's okay to feel scared, and it's more than okay to feel joy. True joy isn't naive. It doesn't ignore pain or pretend everything is perfect. It acknowledges that life is fragile, that love is risky, and it chooses to feel anyway. That's why it's so powerful. Joy is a form of resistance in a world that tells us to guard our hearts. It's a declaration that we will not let fear steal our moments. It's the audacity to dance even when we don't know how the song will end. So yes, shame and joy often hold hands, but we get to decide which one leads. When we let joy take the front seat, shame loses its grip. We don't have to banish it. We just have to stop letting it drive. We can thank it for trying to protect us and then choose to lean in anyway. Because joy, even when it comes with trembling hands and a nervous heart, is always worth it. Every single time. Courage is letting your heart be heard. It's not about loud declarations or grand gestures. It's about telling the truth of who you are, even when your voice shakes. It's about choosing honesty over comfort, vulnerability over silence. In a world that often rewards performance and perfection, it takes real strength to speak from the heart, especially when you don't know how it will be received. But courage isn't about guarantees. It's about showing up, being seen, and staying true to yourself, even when the outcome is uncertain. We tend to think of courage as something external, charging into battle, standing up to injustice, taking physical risks. But some of the most powerful acts of courage happen quietly, internally, like saying, "I love you" first, like asking for help, like admitting that something isn't working anymore. These moments may not look heroic from the outside, but they change everything from the inside. Because when we let our hearts be heard, we stop pretending. And when we stop pretending, we start healing. There's a deep fear that if we speak our truth, we'll be misunderstood, rejected, or judged. And sometimes we will be. That fear is not unfounded. But the alternative, keeping everything inside, staying silent to keep the peace, swallowing our needs, is its own kind of suffering. every time we silence ourselves, we send a message to our own heart. Your voice doesn't matter. Over time, that message takes root and we start to believe it. Courage is the act of undoing that belief. It's the decision to honor your inner voice, even when the world hasn't made it easy to do so. Letting your heart be heard doesn't mean spilling your feelings indiscriminately. It means speaking from a place of integrity. It's not about being impulsive. It's about being authentic. Sometimes it sounds like a confession. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's a simple, quiet truth that's been waiting for air. The form doesn't matter as much as the intention behind it, a desire to live in alignment with who you really are. We often wait for the right moment to be honest. We think we need to feel brave first, but courage doesn't show up in advance. It shows up in the doing. You don't feel brave and then speak. You speak and then realize that was bravery. Most acts of courage are born in uncertainty. They come from a place of not knowing, of risking, of hoping. And that's what makes them beautiful. That rawness, that realness is what connects us as human beings. Letting your heart be heard is also an invitation to others. When you lead with vulnerability, you give permission for others to do the same. You create a space where truth is welcome, not punished. That's how relationships deepen, not through constant agreement or perfection, but through mutual truth-telling. When we speak from the heart, we build trust. Not because we are flawless, but because we are real. Courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about choosing what matters more than fear. And what often matters most is connection, authenticity, love. We want to be known, not just admired. We want to feel safe enough to be seen as we are, not as we pretend to be. And that starts with us, with saying the hard thing, with naming what we need, with revealing what hurts, with celebrating what we love, even if it's not cool or popular or expected. Of course, not everyone will understand. Not everyone will respond the way we hope. But the goal of letting your heart be heard isn't control, it's clarity. It's about standing in your truth and letting that be enough. It's about choosing to live a life that is honest, even if it's not always easy. There is so much noise in the world telling us to be quieter, smaller, easier to digest. But your heart has something to say. And when you let it speak, when you give it the microphone for even a moment, you begin to reclaim something sacred. You remember who you are beneath the masks. You remember that your voice is not just valid, it's needed. So speak the words you've been holding back. Ask the question you're afraid to ask. Express the love you feel, even if it's scary. Let someone see you, not just the polished parts, but the full truth. That is courage, that is power, and that is how we begin to live lives that are not just full, but fully ours. The story we tell ourselves after matters most. Not the event itself, not what someone said or did, not even what happened to us, but the meaning we make of it, the narrative we craft in our own minds, in the quiet aftermath. That's what stays. That's what shapes how we see ourselves, how we love, how we trust, how we move forward. It's the story that becomes our truth, whether or not it's rooted in reality. And more often than we realize, the real damage or the real healing comes not from the event, but from the story we choose to tell ourselves about it. Something goes wrong, a relationship ends, a friend pulls away, we're overlooked, dismissed, hurt, or misunderstood. It stings deeply. But what happens next is even more important. Do we tell ourselves we were never enough, that we're unlovable, that people always leave? Or do we pause, breathe, and tell a different story, a more compassionate one that makes room for imperfection, for complexity, for the truth that our worth was never defined by someone else's inability to see it? The stories we tell ourselves are powerful because they become the lenses through which we see the world. If we tell ourselves we're broken, we'll start to live small. If we tell ourselves we're unworthy, we'll sabotage the very things that might prove otherwise. But if we begin to tell ourselves we're doing the best we can, that we are still growing, still worthy, still becoming, everything changes. The same wound can lead to despair or to growth, depending on the narrative we wrap around it. We don't often realize how automatic and unconscious these stories can be. They are shaped by old patterns, past pain, and cultural messages we've absorbed for years. A moment of rejection might tap into a childhood wound, and suddenly we're not just reacting to the moment, we're reacting to every time we've ever felt not chosen. That's how the story gets distorted. It stops being about this moment and becomes about every moment like it. That's why awareness is so vital. We have to slow down enough to ask ourselves, what story am I telling right now? And is it true? This doesn't mean ignoring our pain or pretending everything is fine. It means being brave enough to hold our pain with honesty and still choose to tell a story that honors our resilience. It means making room for both the wound and the wisdom. We don't have to rewrite history, but we can rewrite our response to it. We can choose self-compassion over self-blame. We can say, that was hard, that hurt, but it doesn't mean I'm broken. It means I'm human. Sometimes we cling to painful stories because they give us a sense of control. If we believe we were the problem, at least we believe we can fix it. But control is not the same as clarity. And clarity comes from telling ourselves the whole story, not just the parts that feed our shame. Maybe someone walked away not because we weren't lovable, but because they couldn't meet us where we were. Maybe we failed not because we were incapable, but because we were exhausted and trying to do too much alone. The truth is rarely simple, but it is almost always more gentle than the stories shame tries to write. When we change the story, we change the path forward. We give ourselves permission to heal, to grow, to show up differently. We stop living as though the past is still happening. We begin to trust ourselves again, not because everything worked out, but because we chose to face it with honesty and grace. And from that place, we write new stories. Stories of resilience, of courage, of soft strength. Stories where we are not victims of our past, but authors of our future. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can choose how we make sense of it. And that sense-making is the most powerful act of self-care we have, because long after the dust settles, long after the words are spoken and the moments pass, what remains is the story. And if we're willing, we can make that story a place of healing, a place where we remember that we are worthy, that we are still becoming, that we are always enough.